CEO and founder of RevOps Co-op. We have a global community of 16,000 plus revenue operators from all over the globe. And we are here to talk about sealing the deal and how you can leverage AI and smarter price quotes to ultimately deliver faster revenue. And I'm going to actually turn it over to Mark to tell us a little bit more about the details of what we're going to be diving into today and also introduce the panelists that we have.
Yeah. So I'm going to share my screen here, and you don't have to worry. These are the only slides that we're going to be doing on this one. So just to set the mood here a little bit, I am really excited to have my colleagues and friends, Eran, he's the VP of Customer Success here at DealHub, as well as Ryan McDermott, who's the VP of Revenue Operations at Thiviti. And Ryan is really, when it comes to this world of CPQ, there really is no one that, in my mind, a better source of knowledge and insight than Ryan. And he's been someone that we work alongside with very often as a partner and colleague. So really excited to be able to hear him and Eran kind of jam on this, what's going on here. So we're going to talk about sealing the deal, smarter price quotes with plus AI for faster revenue. Some of the things we're going to really talk about is, first of all, if you're paying attention to the CPQ kind of space, there's a lot going on as of late. And so we're definitely going to make sure we cover some of that. And we're going to talk about some of the legacy CPQ systems that are starting to be off the playing field and some strategies if you decide to migrate, and how to structure pricing quotes to be more accurate and faster, rolling out CPQ so that sellers and legal and ops can actually use it and embrace it. Ryan's going to tap into his wealth of experience and insight to give us a bird's eye view. Towards the end, we're going to give you guys a sneak peek into some of the ways that AI is going to be shaping DealHub's CPQ offering going forward. So that's where we're going to be covering. I'm going to pass it over to the folks who will be having this conversation. But to help break the ice here, first I'll start. The question that Matt always asks to get people to give you a little insight into who they are is, if you were coming out onto stage at the next RevOps AF event to speak in front of a packed audience, what song are they playing when you walk out? So my answer is and continues to be Enter Sandman by Metallica. Ryan, I'll start with you. You can maybe introduce yourself a little bit and answer that question, and we can take from there.
Sure. I should have seen this one coming. I just heard a podcast talking about walkout songs for batting, right? Yeah. So glad to be here. Eran, glad to chat with Eran. Eran and I are both here in Austin. Unfortunately, we don't get a chance to see each other in person enough. We're kind of like on opposite sides of Austin, but Eran, we need to make a point to make that lunch happen soon.
If there was something happening Thursday night where you guys could come to this.
That's true. That's a good point. I like that idea. So as not to avoid the question, the song that comes to mind, and I hope I'm not putting myself in the wrong spot here, but Mr. Brightside by the Killers.
Wow.
I like that song.
Love that.
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
That would get me pretty jazzed up. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. I should have seen that coming as well. I guess I'd have to go to the song that always bring me good vibes, which is the Macklemores and all that. That would be my go-to song. Yeah.
Cool.
And do you want to continue on everything you started saying, Ryan? First of all, thank you all joining us. I think it's fantastic to see so many folks on the line, as well as seeing some names out there that I know of, some of my customers. So definitely very excited for you to be present on the call, but also to share this time with Ryan and with all of you. We want to keep it more of a conversation between Ryan and myself. Things we have done pretty regularly, I'll say, over the past years. I've been personally with DealHub 4 years and working with hundreds of customers. I've been working with Ryan almost throughout the same time in different capacities with different customers ever since. And I'm going to, of course, let Ryan put his background out there so that he can explain his journey. But Ryan is my go-to person. Whenever we come into a point, he's definitely the one guy that I personally always reach out to whenever I'm eating a wall. Okay, Ryan, let's go. I want to start the conversation. We do have a flow of questions that we want to propose to the team. And I'm going to be, of course, asking Ryan. We try to structure the questions and just put a framing about the flow of the conversation we're going to be having. It's really coming from the basics all the way towards the end when you go in and sign the contract. So all of those building blocks that goes into signing a deal and creating the deal from the get-go and all the way to the signature process. And the first topic that I want to focus on is Ryan. And I think that's really is where we hit the road. And that's when you can also introduce yourself, is we are introduced today to many companies where we work with, we interact with, and we are witnessing a lot of broken processes throughout the quoting path. There are many processes for multiple reasons, some of them for related to manual processes, disconnected systems, outdated tools. But bottom line is that the reps are wasting time jumping between different platforms, sales collaterals, pricing calculators. Approvals are slow. Some of them I've seen those in Slack, which is outrageous in my opinion. Quotes are inconsistent and inaccurate. Frictions with the sales cycle, with the buyers themselves, of course, and for leaders, hard to get the insights that they need to improve execution of their teams. I wanted to ask the questions and start putting it up there as we're going to be talking to this point. But Ryan, as a former DealHub customer, we actually became to be trusted partners after experiencing that firsthand. Any first thoughts before we hit the road?
Yeah, I think it probably pains you and I so much when we see organizations using spreadsheets or Slack for approvals, because we know how easy it could be, right? Like we know where they could be with just a little bit of effort. With that, I'll talk a little bit about our history. And I know that I'm not the only person who has been a customer of DealHub's, then worked at DealHub or a partner of DealHub. I mean, it feels like once you get your hands on a tool like that and you invest the time and effort to learn it, and you see the change it does to your organization, it's hard to let it go, right? So that's where my journey with DealHub started. And I think it's going to be relevant to some of the folks here on the phone. I saw from the poll that we have some folks that are using Salesforce CPQ. That's originally what platform I was operating on. So I came from a technology company. This goes back to 2018, 2019, pre-COVID. Everything's pre-COVID, post-COVID. But we were a combination of 5 companies. The company was Sixterra. We were a data center company and then 4 other software companies. And when the systems got implemented, it was basically a spin out from CenturyLink. So if you can imagine the Salesforce environment that was deployed for CenturyLink, and you take that and you copy it and you try to run it in a small company, oh man, it was rough. But I came in and I was in RevOps. So what does RevOps do? Like, you try to enable the sales team any way you can. So I inherited the Salesforce CPQ tool that was built, and I had to train the users on it. I had to help them with questions and so forth. So as we go through the conversation today, I want to show you how DealHub works practically. Also talk about like the migration from Salesforce CPQ to DealHub. I think after we spun out, because we were 5 companies in 2020, the software companies decided to spin out. We had an open field to build all our systems from the ground up, right? So the whole tech stack for RevOps. So it's like a RevOps person's dream, right? Like usually you walk in and you're just like trying to patch holes as fast as you can and just hold the thing together. But we got to build from the ground up. So we built a whole new Salesforce platform and we bought DealHub. And as you know, when you're a small startup, you buy the tool and then everybody looks around and says, who's going to build it? And it's just there weren't many people in the room. So I was the one that built our DealHub instance alongside my CSM, Itai, who was in Israel this was back in 2020. So this is during pandemic, and it was a fun process. And that the building was fun, and I'll talk about that a little bit as we go through the conversation today. But where we really had fun is when the sales reps and the legal team and the finance team all got their hands on the tool. I'm sure if you haven't seen DealHub yet, as we walk through it, you'll see night and day how different experience it is from other CPQ tools. Somebody happy, maybe the sales rep, maybe the customer, the legal team. That was like the biggest thing that made us say, oh, I think we've changed something here. So yeah, it's been a fun journey.
Tough. Well, that's a good start off to hit the road with all of the topics that we came up before the sessions. And the first one is really, we wanted to connect the real world CPQ challenges and what are those, and how does implementing a proper CPQ tool out there really can support that. So we both have seen many customers, and I'm pretty confident that most of the folks on the call relate to some of those challenges. So from reducing time to create code to solving calculating issues, data inputs and integrity, clear rules for approval workflows, eliminating human errors. There are so many of those. You mentioned, Ryan, legal team, so standardizing the order forms and introducing the legal team review and deadline. And of course, not to forget the end buyer experience. So there are many of those challenges that we come across when we hit the road with the CPQ implementation. What's your kind of thought process when you go about those, Ryan? How do you first untangle those and bucket those challenges?
Yeah, well, I'm talking to the expert on the other side of the line too, right? Untangling the challenges, every organization's at a different point, right? And so there's a journey that companies go through from being a one-person organization where the CEO sells everything and he makes prices up and he approves it. It all just happens in his head. And then you add a few people that are trusted to do what they want. Maybe you give them a Word document, and ultimately, like, that journey ends at all of a sudden you're 1,000-person company. You have sellers that don't know your products, don't know your process, don't you know your pricing, and you have to build all these constraints around them. So you and I know we meet these customers where they're at, right? Sometimes it is a lot of documenting, helping them, doing a lot of business process analysis and understanding, well, how do you do approvals? When do you do approval? And writing things down. Really, actually, I've seen it be a very healthy process for companies because Ron, have you ever heard somebody say, I didn't know people sold that?
Like, so many times. I could be rich if I could just get $1 for every time I heard that.
Right. I didn't know we still sold that product. So it's a healthy process that every company needs to go through as a stage of maturation, right? So depending on where they're at, we do different work, right? If you've already implemented a system for quoting, maybe it's not a CPQ, maybe it's a rigorously checked spreadsheet and a rigorously documented legal process and approvals. Even if they're going through Slack, you have a process for it, right? Once you have things systematized, you've figured out all your business processes, you put them on paper, you've made people follow the rules. That's really where the easy work starts. So the challenges with every company are different, but I think that the payoff, no matter what the work that has to be done, is always worth it, right? Because to your point, Eran, it saves all you time and money all over the place that you don't realize. There's all these hidden costs that happen, whether it's a sales rep giving away early termination, right? And the legal team doesn't know it, whether it's not delivering the proposal for 4 days and a competitor gets one in 30 minutes and wins the business. There's hidden costs all over the place, people running all over the place, doing work to get simple approvals. So all this work and effort, like if your company is maturing, you need to do it at some point. The earlier you do it, the sooner you're going to get the ROI on your investment, right?
Yeah, in full agreement. And I think one of the parts that kind of throws me off is interacting with companies and they're hesitant about putting guardrails and utilizing the system to drive a culture and behavior of the sales team. We're getting a little too early. We don't want to push them too far. We don't want to contain them. And I think with the right tool and right implementation set and putting those pros and cons on the table, many organizations can actually learn from putting those guardrails in place. There is a lot of learning curves associated with that.
Yeah, I think it's go live early with a small number of people and put up larger guardrails. So when we launched at AppGate, at some point, you got to put it out there. The only testing that's actually going to happen is when a sales rep creates his first quote. Obviously, you test, but that's the real world test. And so what we did is we put a blanket approval that revenue ops had to look at every quote for the first week. And it gave me great feedback loop. So we launched and reps started to quote. I saw the quotes, I'd approve them. I think maybe one of the mistakes that organizations sometimes make is creating all of this drama around going live, right? When, especially with a tool like DealHub, there doesn't have to be that much drama around going live. You can go live with one product set for one salesperson
Yes.
and let him use it. And then you build this momentum like snowball, because once he's using it, then he's getting quotes out in 30 minutes and everybody else is taking a week. And then other people hear about it. They say, hey, can I get access? And it just naturally evolves. Yeah.
No, in full agreement. And I think with the right data behind the scenes, that really helps organizations today to identify those champions. Even if when you go with a subset of users, we're able to identify and support our team, identify those champions, drive the adoption and maturity of the tool. Jumping in, implementation and migration. What does that mean? So, right, I want to really open the conversation just before you start with the screen sharing and show folks the behind the scenes and the magic. What have you seen work best in terms of implementing and migrating, between implementing DealHub or migrating from a different system into DealHub?
So I think that migration is also one of those big scary words, right? For anybody that's gone through a migration, it is a big scary word, right? When I was Xterra and we spun out as Appgate, we migrated and we had to migrate all the data and make decisions about every piece of data so that there would be a hard cutover from one system to another. I like to find ways to slowly migrate. And so here's an example of that, right? Renewals. You and I know, Ron, that the sooner that you start quoting in DealHub, the sooner you'll be able to renew in a year, because you'll be creating all the data in the system and you're not just trapping it in a PDF on somebody's PC. Sometimes organizations put this big hurdle out there around migration and getting all the data ready, when in reality, the sooner that you go live with your new business process, the sooner you're helping the future Ryan or the future Eran. The timescale doesn't keep sliding a year out. That's one element of it. I have a former colleague and he likes to talk about the end in mind. That's in regards to like when you're going into a conversation, but I think it also applies for migration, right? Because you can get lost in, we have 1,000 data points. We need to keep these 1,000 data points for our migration. When in reality, organizations accumulate those 1,000 data points because last year Mark asked for this field and then Eran asked for that field. And I don't know, Bill, who left 5 years ago, he asked for a field, but we keep collecting it. So if you try to go down each one of the 1,000 data points and figure out, well, what do I need to keep? You're never going to finish, right? So if you start with the end, knowing, okay, well, when we do renewals in here, or when we quote new customers, what data do we need? And then look back at your historical data and figure out how to migrate it. It can simplify things. I've got a diagram I'll share in a little bit, like specifically if you're coming from Salesforce CPQ, it's a simplified version, but there are a lot of pathways to bring the data from Salesforce CPQ to DealHub.
No, for sure. And I think you're spot on. One of the things that we enjoy working with customers is really defining that custom path that works well for them. There isn't really one size that fits all. You started mentioning the fact that you can start off with one user and let him just start only him creating on DealHub, building that maturity, identifying those areas that we haven't covered that needs to be buttoned up on the implementation before we go at scale. And for me, when I look at that and I say, well, a successful DealHub implementation should look like that, it always has to start with the aligning to the business goals. That is really the first thing we do. I started from the sales process with our sales team where we get the handover to the team, but we go deeper into the discovery session where we really understand the customer needs. We are mapping the current quoting process. And honestly, not all customers want to do the same. We are getting a lot of customers that come to us and say, well, this is how we do today. I don't want to do that. Just give me something new, something better, something more modern that aligns to my future state where I want to be at. There is a lot of cleaning of products and pricing data that goes into the process that we usually work together with the customer. And from there, go configure the platform, integrate to the CRM, ERP, any downstream system that needs to be integrated, run a pilot with real users. But really the key success to a successful implementation, the key factor, I'll say, is really involving the sales team in the CPQ implementation as early as possible. Get the champions. We always say, just give us the loudest salesperson in the team, the most vocal, the most troublemaker, bring them on. We want to interact with them. We want them to go through the process and share with us knowledge. But overall, as we go about it and we keep the workflow intuitive, treating the rollout as a transformation versus just a tech project, I think it is definitely key to a successful implementation. I guess let's go, Brian, and dive deep into your use case, your real life example. And I want to kind of point out, of course, Ryan, you've done it before. Even after that, you've been helping other customers undergo the same process. From your standpoint and from your experience, what was unique about your migration from Salesforce CPQ to DealHub?
Yeah, I think that's a good lead off to talk through a lot of the differences between DealHub and Salesforce CPQ. So I think what was unique is we were a spin out, right? So we were able to take things that we identified as noise and push them to the side. Back to what you're saying, like it was a transformation project, but not only did we want to leave all the legacy products behind that we didn't sell, but we wanted to transform the way our sellers sold. I in revenue ops wanted to transform the way that I supported them. So I have those recurring nightmares, like you wake up and you forgot to go to a test at school or something. I have this recurring theme where sellers would hit me on Teams and say, hey, I have this quote. I don't know what's wrong with it. It's not approved. And in Salesforce CPQ, it was very challenging to figure out why it was up for approval, who was supposed to approve it. Then my job was just to chase people. So I had those kind of like nightmares that I didn't want to repeat in the new system. So we really had a good idea of what we didn't want when we built it. And so we were able to solve for those pain points. Let me share at a high level how we took the information from Salesforce CPQ, translated it over to DealHub, right? So I'm going to attempt to screen share and let me know how this works. Do you see my desktop?
Yes.
All right. And you don't see pictures of yourself on there, right? Cool. All right. So I'm going to switch over. I'm going to share a data diagram. And it's crude, but it's very functional, right? So in Salesforce CPQ, you're familiar with things such as products. Obviously, you have bundles that you sell. You have price books where you maintain and contain the prices of each product. You have approvals. And then a very simplified PDF. I'll talk a little bit later about the update process between a PDF and Salesforce CPQ versus DealHub. But you can see how all that data translates over to places in DealHub, right? So the product in DealHub, that's where you configure when it gets assigned. You configure what the price is. You set up bundles and so forth. You have a separate section for approvals. And then you have a place where you can build the PDF document or the quote. So everything that exists data-wise is relatively easy to figure out how it's going to translate over to DealHub. The piece that probably doesn't exist in Salesforce CPQ is oftentimes people maintain things like sales guides or seller sheets. You know, hey, if it's this type of customer, you should sell X, Y, and Z, right? And so oftentimes salespeople are digging through SharePoint, looking at these sales guides to try to figure out what to sell. Well, DealHub actually allows you to build all that right in the playbook, right? And we'll talk a little bit later about guided selling and how it's different, but that's where it lives, is in the playbook. And then if you want to show off your organization, you're oftentimes sending out PowerPoints or you're showing marketing pages. Those all kind of translate over to the deal room. So that's at a very high level how the information translates from one system to another.
Good stuff. You've definitely touched on and demonstrated to us, or at least to the audience, some of those building blocks that goes into the DealHub platform. Those are definitely important. One thing, and You'll probably touch on that, but I think what's very valuable is that DealHub is not really a coding platform. There is no need for any coding experience when we work on the platform. It makes it as an easy entry into the product. And the first part that we always start off with any implementation is really the guided setting, oftentimes being referred to as the decision tree. And that really is where we start building our basically tree roots and all of those decision-making points throughout it. But I guess what is the guided setting from your perspective, Ryan?
Yeah, I love your describing it as a decision tree, right? Because if you can imagine, it is exactly what your sellers are doing every day as they're talking to a customer. They're taking in information, they're assessing, okay, what size customer is this? Are they SMB? Are they enterprise? How many users do they have? Do they need implementation? They're answering all of these questions in their head and trying to meet it up with what product they need to sell. So let me flip over. I'm going to show the guided selling process. And so I've got a very simplified software company that I'm going to demo for you. It's called Nimbus IT Services. I used to work a lot in cloud computing, so it just like sticks in my mind. But I want to start in Salesforce because, inevitably you don't want your users to have to jump between 5 different tools and remember where to go. So your sellers are in Salesforce or they're in HubSpot or Dynamics, and they have their opportunity of their deal. It's time to make the quote. All they do is hit the create quote button. And this experience can happen all self-contained within Salesforce. The nice thing there is if you're operating in spreadsheets right now, then they're probably doing things like translating over the company name, the billing address, and so forth. Like obviously the system just pulls all that dynamically, but I want to jump. So this is the playbook. The playbook is the guided selling experience. I started building it in 2020. It's evolved so much, and it's always really cool to work with your team and everybody's sharing tips and tricks about how to get things to work certain ways. And I don't remember being able to make colors and make the
Yes.
guided selling so much more dynamic.
The small things.
It really is the small things, but it
Yeah.
makes such a difference, right? Because if you can imagine as a sales rep, you come in to a new company and you have so much work to do just to figure out how to describe the elevator pitch for the company. And then a lot of sales reps have a further challenge. They need to learn how to actually quote the products, which is just like crazy.
Sorry, that's right. Actually, I was just 2 days ago, I was with a customer call and the customer says it was a retrospective about implementation. And I was kind of, what's the biggest win that you got from the implementation? And from his perspective, it was, Eran, I can hire you now as my salesperson, knowing nothing about what I'm selling, about my business, you can sell for me. That's what I like about it. So
Yeah.
that was a good call out.
And it's so true. I mean, in revenue ops at Appgate, I worked hand in hand with Guy Dersh. He was sales enablement, and we did all the sales onboarding. And I'll tell you, we would give a 30-minute overview of how to get into DealHub, and then they never came back to us because it's descriptive. It's just a question and answer. And I like to describe it as a waterfall because as I go through, I make decisions, and you can inform the user so that they know, okay, am I selling SMB or enterprise? And as I do that, it dynamically changes so that I'm not going to try to sell the starter to the enterprise customer. You can also set guardrails, right? Like you can't sell less than 100 elite licenses. You can sell more, right? So the rep doesn't have to keep any of this in their mind as they go through it. And all the while, as I kind of step through this, I'm just making choices. I'm just answering questions that are linked, but not necessarily add this product, add that product. On the back end, we've configured it so that I know, hey, if Ryan has put 103 elite users, go ahead and put it down here in the product summary. The product summary is like the salesperson's working space, right? This is where they go in, they make decisions about discounting and so forth. This is just another thing that can be challenging in some CPQ systems is just getting to the right price. And DealHub makes it really, really easy to be able to just dial in exactly what price you want, automatically discounts it.
No, for sure, for sure. I think that's great. What I really also like about the guided setting is the fact that you can also enable specific functions in the organization to really go and exceed those guardrails that you've defined. So in that case, where you define that a seller cannot go below 100 seats, you can definitely have a function in the team that will have the access to lower capacity or specific products that only they can add them into the system. So the guided setting is also not just the guardrail for the sellers. It has multiple dimensions that can be applied from a roles perspective or users in the platform and so forth.
We got a great question here from the audience. So I'll put it to both of you for your expertise on it. The question is, could DealHub replace the product management and quote build part of Salesforce CPQ only, then automate through SFDC to Ironclad for form generation and approval? They said Ironclad is in use for all contracts across the business, not just sales quotes. So at this time, we are set on using it for quote document signature, but need to move away from Salesforce CPQ. Sounds like a
Absolutely. I can speak firsthand on that. We do have many customers that are in the same challenge. There are multiple legal documents that are going through the organization. It's not just about the sales and the quotation process. We have many customers that are in the same function of quoting within DealHub, managing products and all of the quote information within DealHub, syncing the information back to the CRM, in this case, Salesforce, and then allowing the specific data points to be mapped to the opportunity so that Ironclad can utilize to generate the documents. We do have customers that are utilizing our APIs to identify and provision Ironclad automatically when quote has been saved or submitted, depending on the different API keys that you define.
Yeah. Just to piggyback on that, one thing to recognize here is we're doing the configuration part, we're doing the pricing, but when we hit submit or we sync it back to Salesforce, all that data goes back into standard objects in Salesforce. So it goes back to your quote line items, goes back to your opportunity products. In fact, we can even sync back question specific answers, right? So if you want to dictate, let's just go through this example. If you wanted to dictate, let a salesperson select early termination, this today is being used to determine what goes on the PDF in DealHub the way I configured it, but there's no reason you couldn't send it back to the opportunity and then dictate how you build that agreement or what approvals you drive off of the opportunity or the quote in Salesforce, probably with a minimal modification on that side because you're probably already doing those selections and questions and answers there, right? And Eran, to your point about like how the playbook can be manipulated to show things to some users and not other users. And also what I like about this is you never want to be able to let a salesperson select early termination, remove the auto, do all of this. But there are times when it makes sense for a salesperson to quote early termination, right? So you want to allow them to do that and then just have it go automatically to an approval. So I've got this legal approval, right? So rather than Ryan, sales rep, go to Brenton, hey, can I please do this? Hey, can you please open up the PDF, modify it, blah, blah, blah. Let the user, to that point again, like give them guardrails, but verify, right? So allowing them to make these selections, this could be a field that you only show to the legal team, right? And all this is, of course, driving different information on the PDF, right? So I changed the payment terms and so forth. All that can be configured really easily. I think given the time, I do want to show, we've kind of described how easy it is. I want to show how easy it is really quickly. So bear with me. I'm going to do this live. Let's just look at the back end, right? So this is the playbook. Let's look at the products section. So products in the back of the playbook. So product question group, right? And I see here my question, my headline, products. And then I ask, what's the customer type? So let's add a follow-on question that only shows up in a certain situation. So for example, we want to make sure that somebody's not trying to sell enterprise licenses to an SMB customer. If they select enterprise and just double check, hey, are you sure they have more than 250 users? So it's as simple as adding a question, and I'm just going to call this enterprise check. And then I'm going to ask the user, are you sure this customer is of enterprise size? And I'm going to make this a yes, no question. So DealHub's got different options, like you can have numeric answers, you can have text answers. And of course, you can pull in information from Salesforce, but I'm going to keep this clean and simple. We're going to call this yes, no. Now, let me save it. And then I am going to jump in here. And let's look at my change. Here it is. Now, there's one problem, right? It's showing up all the time. The logic, and this is what I really fell in love with, is so straightforward. So right now the question is defined to show up always, but we really only want this question to show up if the customer type is enterprise. So I type in customer, it gives me the option, and then I say if it equals enterprise. That's it. So if I did it right, it should show up when we jump over back to the playbook. Fingers crossed. All right, we've got our enterprise, our question. And so like you talked about decision tree, right? For guided selling. That's where I'm going to pull this over real quick. I just kind of pulled this up on.
You're pulling that up, Brian. We got a follow-up question, I think, from the previous question. I believe it's from the same person. They said that we have a constant battle between wanting and needing, or wanting/needing, to show line item details versus single bundle price. Can DealHub jump between the two easily?
I can take that. It's actually a pretty common use case that we see with customers. And we have a couple of bundling capabilities within the platform. We have a fixed price, and we also have a capability which we call the virtual bundles. In that use case, we allow the seller to bundle specific SKUs together, name the bundle, order the products, discounted price individually or the total, and that carries over to the document and the line items information. Yes, very flexible in, again, multiple dimensions. How does the seller want to combine or isolate line items?
Yeah, it's a very common use case. I would say that, I mean, Eran, we have several customers that we work on together that they need line item detail to understand, because they have 3-4 different costs that are rolled into a single product, and they need to attribute the separate costs back in the organization. But you can't, nor do you want to show that detail to the customer. So the things that, the way that you represent your pricing to customers in DealHub is obviously through the PDF, which is the signed document, but you also do it in the deal room. And these pricing tables are, like you said, completely configurable based on the situation.
Yeah, we're definitely moving from different dimensions, and I'm excited that you're sharing the deal room. Deal room is definitely where we like to bring it together, the sellers, the buyers, and just try and seal the deal. That's the name of the topic that we have here. But I think what's very fascinating and insightful, and Ryan, I don't know if you have it handy, is really the deal stream capabilities. That's where we are able to present to our sellers the buyer's engagement within the deal room to be able to demonstrate whether the buyer went into and accessed the deal room, to what capacity, whether they invited someone else. It just creates a better buyer intention mindset when working on the deal versus just sending it out through a DocuSign. So we can see that at the top, those live events that are fitting into the process. Where what's also very cool, Ryan is now in a mode of individual seller. But if you're a manager, you're going to see all of your people. You can navigate from one persona to another, one seller to another.
Yeah, the deal stream's really cool. And I will tell you, as a seller that uses DealHub myself for our business, there's always that feeling of, well, I sent them a quote. Did they look at it? So being able to check the deal stream or getting kind of real-time emails. So I just, on an example earlier, I sent it to a fake customer. I can see when they open it. I can see when they pass it on to another person at the customer site. I can see when they sign it. So you get like this x-ray vision into the deal as it's happening that you just wouldn't have otherwise.
So I think and Mark, please keep on, I know we're short of time, but keep on bringing those questions when they come along. We're going to cruise as much as we can. Let's talk about price adjustments and making those updates. Those are often changes, as we know. So when you look at that, what were the team's experience with CPQ, Salesforce CPQ, and how did that differ when you moved over to DealHub?
Yeah, let me pull this back up really quick because this is an incredibly important point. I would often have experiences where sellers were trying to get to a dollar value for a customer, right? And whether it's, hey, for the elite users, the customer only wants to pay $250,000. Well, I just did that really easily in DealHub, right? And it seems simple, but when we operated in another CPQ system, they were doing all kinds of math in a spreadsheet to try to come up with 3.678, and then they would miss the mark. And you see what I'm doing here, right? I'm bouncing around and never arrive at the price. And then they come to RevOps and say, Ryan, I can't get it to work. DealHub just bakes that right into the platform. So it's not even something that you have to worry about configuring. It's just all part of it.
Ryan, thank you. I know we have a lot of other topics that we wanted to cover, but I know
for next time.
Yeah, next time.
We got to give the people what they want.
Yes, exactly. So let's show you some AI. So this is the AI stuff that DealHub has been working on. This is really the first preview of the capabilities we've been introducing to some of our enterprise customers. And essentially what we are working on as a team is really to empower your executives, deal desk team, revenue operations to really drive a better understanding about how is the business doing. And essentially, and of course, don't take screenshots, or you can, of course, it's recorded, but this will definitely get into a better and new look and feel than it is today. But as Ryan started sharing under the proposals, deal rooms capabilities, approval, or contracts, we do have that DealHub AI capabilities. The DealHub AI allows you to have a dedicated insight library, and the insight library really gives you a very common use cases. DealHub will, of course, provide our best practices. We're working with hundreds, if not thousands of customers at this point. We have learned so much. We have our internal tools today that we connect data about our customers and we introduce them and make it accessible to them so that they can make better decisions about their business, about their quality process. But we want to allow our customers to control that and to have more flexibility and ownership on the capabilities. What's really cool is that the system, the AI that we're going to overlay, it's going to be, of course, subjected to the customers, to specific customers' data. There is no data leakage between, of course, customers. And also what's very nice is that the AI will not store any customers' data. It's all based on production data in DealHub. Basically, the engine is deployed on the DealHub environment, and we don't send data anywhere else. What's also very cool is that data can be downloaded, scheduled. You can develop what we call those smart scenarios, where if I want to look back and define a specific time frame, I'll just let it run. I can run multiple queries, and on each one of them, and I'm going to let it run in the background, I can start diving deeper. So if I'm going to go here, show, top, I can continue and ask questions based on the data, slice and dice the information in order to get to my bottom line. The next steps of what you're seeing on the screen is really being able to introduce to the sellers an ideal quotation process that will likely get approved and the win rate is higher in a specific configurations. The next step of that is going to be basically allowing customers to type in what they want to quote, allowing the AI to ingest the information into the quote process, and be able to drive a better end user experience through that. And I know we are on time. Any questions as the AI is doing its thing?
That's pretty incredible. And I know I've always been especially curious on where CPQ companies are heading and how they're incorporating AI into the products. And it's pretty clear looking at that, just the amount of value that can deliver to end users, and that you guys are definitely doing it in a very intentional and value-driven way. So I absolutely love that. And Ryan, thanks so much for kind of dropping some knowledge on everybody today, and especially walking through some specific use cases like that. Very timely and super relevant. Folks love the detailed stuff like that. So my guess is you'll probably be getting hit up by a couple of people that saw this today.
Absolutely.
So Eran, Ryan, Mark, thank you guys very much for dropping some knowledge on the folks today. And to all the attendees out there, thank you very much for attending. But that's all I got for you. I'll let you run to your next meeting. Have a good rest of your Tuesday, everybody, and a good rest of your week. We'll see you all at the next one.
Thanks.